In 1994, a 5-year-old boy vanished from a YMCA locker room. No one saw him leave. No one heard a sound. Just a single red lanyard left hanging on a hook, and a locker key no one could explain. For 30 years the case was ice cold, until the old pool was drained. And beneath the concrete, they found a hidden room. A child-sized bed, a camera mount, and the first of many names. What you're about to hear was never meant to be found. Subscribe for more true crime stories unraveling long-buried secrets. September 5th, 1994, Monroe, YMCA, Indiana. The sound of splashing water echoed off the tiled walls. 5-year-old Lucas Danner was last seen heading into the locker room to change. His key, number 14, was found resting on the bench. The locker was empty. No one ever saw him leave. Police believed he had wandered off, but the security camera system was under repair, and no alarm was ever triggered. The case went cold. Parents stopped asking. But in 2024, the truth begins to rise with the water's recession. Present day, Monroe, Indiana. July 12, 2024, 7:42 a.m. The water in the pool didn't look right. Even before the crew started draining it, it had taken on a greenish tint, cloudy, murky, with a strange metallic sheen when the sun hit just right. The Monroe YMCA had been closed for renovations for nearly 3 months, but the pool had sat dormant for years. Nobody swam here anymore, not after what happened. Miguel Sandoval stood at the edge of the deep end, squinting down into the shallow swirl as the last of the water spun around the rusted drain. His work boots were damp from the morning hose down, and the humid July air clung to the inside of his respirator. He pulled it off, exhaling hard. "Hey, Jer," he called, gesturing to the pitted concrete floor. "You seen this line?" Jerome Petty, his foreman, ambled over with a clipboard in one hand and a half-eaten breakfast bar in the other. He followed Miguel's pointing finger to a faint seam running across the base of the pool. At first glance, it looked like a harmless crack, old concrete warped with time. But it wasn't a crack. Not exactly. "That's a panel," Jerome said flatly. "Look at the bolts. Somebody patched this." Miguel knelt, brushing a gloved hand across the seam. The concrete gave off a chalky residue. The bolts weren't factory standard. They looked retrofitted, improvised. "Thought this pool was poured in one piece back in the 70s, he murmured. Jerome nodded. "It was. I remember swim lessons here when I was a kid. There weren't no seams back then." Miguel pressed harder and felt the faintest give beneath his palm. He looked up. "You want me to tap it loose?" Jerome glanced over his shoulder, lowering his voice. "Not yet. Let's call in the city inspector first. We don't want to bust anything structural. If it's covering utility, we'll get fined." But Miguel wasn't listening anymore. He'd stepped down into the pool, boots echoing faintly on the hollow floor. He crouched again, this time with a flat pry bar, easing it under the lip of the panel. When the first bolt popped free with a shriek of rusted steel, something shifted under the concrete. A dull echo followed, a hollowness no one expected beneath 12 feet of solid ground. The two men stared at each other. That wasn't utility. Later that day, 11:06 a.m., City Inspector Aaron Delgrave ran a flashlight beam across the now exposed hatch. 5 bolts had been removed, the others showing signs of corrosion and hasty welding. "What's beneath this?" he asked, voice clipped. "You got blueprints?" Jerome passed him a rolled schematic from the site file. "Original build, 1973. No mention of any chamber beneath." "No auxiliary access, no water reclamation storage?" Delgrave probed. "None. Closest thing is the maintenance hallway, and it runs 20 feet in the other direction." Delgrave crouched, tapping the edge of the hatch with the butt of his flashlight. This is aftermarket work. Someone installed this years after the pool was poured. No permits, no record, no logical reason for it to exist. He stood and looked at the crew. Cut the rest. 12:14 p.m. It took 45 minutes and a reciprocating saw to break through the last stubborn bolt. The hatch moaned as it shifted, groaning against the surrounding concrete. Miguel backed up, sweat dripping down his temple. Ready? Lift, Jerome said. 2 crowbars wedged under the lip. They heaved. The hatch groaned. Then it popped. The air that escaped smelled wrong, stale, metallic, faintly organic. The crew instinctively stepped back as the panel gave way and tilted open on a rusted hinge. A square hole yawned beneath them, roughly 6 feet wide. A metal ladder descended into darkness. Jerome peered down, his voice suddenly tight. "It's a room." "Lights?" someone asked. "Not yet." "We wait for the inspector." Delgrave stepped forward, face pale. "I'll go first." He descended slowly, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through dust and darkness. 30 seconds later, his voice echoed up from below. "Call the police, now." 12:41 p.m. Detective Isla Moreno arrived with 2 patrol officers and an evidence tech from county. The hatch had been cordoned off. No one had entered since Delgrave's discovery. Moreno squatted at the edge of the opening. "What exactly did you find?" Delgrave didn't answer at first. He just pointed to the items he'd placed in an evidence bag, now sitting on the hood of his city truck. A child's towel, pale blue. YMCA logo still visible. Swim trunks. Size, toddler. And a pair of Velcro sandals, sun-faded but intact. "Everything down there is decades old," Delgrave said quietly. "Toys, bedding, VHS tapes, and a name etched into the inside of the ladder well." Moreno picked up the towel carefully, gloved hands trembling just slightly. Her voice dropped. "What name?" He swallowed. "Lucas, 1:12 p.m. Inside the vault. The chamber was about 10 feet by 10 feet, constructed from cinder block and steel bracing. The walls had been painted pink once, though now faded to a sickly gray peach. Mold clung to the baseboards. A twin mattress lay on the floor, no frame, no box spring. Just a stained sheet and a pillow that had gone yellow with time. Toys were scattered across the floor, plastic dinosaurs, a Viewmaster, a doll with one missing eye. A child's handwriting was scrawled on the wall in marker. Lucas was here. On a metal shelf, VHS cassettes, dozens, each labeled with dates and numbers. Moreno picked one up. 9-2-94, L. Danner, room day 1. She turned to the technician beside her. "We need every one of these logged and bagged. No one touches them without gloves. I want them copied to digital as soon as possible." The tech nodded, swallowing hard. "Do we know if Lucas survived in here?" Moreno exhaled, staring at the deteriorated mattress. "There's no remains, no blood, just a room and a timeline." She turned to the hatch. "Get the cold case unit and someone from the FBI. This is bigger than it looks." 1:53 p.m. Local news alerts begin. Breaking. Monroe YMCA construction crew discovers underground. Room beneath old pool. Unconfirmed sources suggest items linked to 1994 missing child case. Mother of Lucas Danner, 5, has been contacted by authorities for possible identification. 3 p.m. Elsewhere in Monroe. A man sat in his car at the edge of an industrial lot, watching the news on his phone. His hands trembled as he lit a cigarette, the flame flickering against his unshaven face. When he saw the towel, he dropped the lighter. And when he saw the swim trunks, he began to cry. He hadn't said a word in 30 years. But now they were coming. July 13th, 2024, 8:10 a.m. Monroe Police Department, Evidence Room 3. Detective Ela Moreno stood in the chilled evidence locker, her breath faint in the artificial cold. The tapes had been moved here overnight, 57 total, cataloged by the county techs, bagged and tagged, their labels logged in sequence. Room day 1, room day 2, room day 3, all the way to room day 48. Each one bore the initials LD in faded black marker. Lucas Danner. The boy who'd vanished from swim practice in 1994 and was never seen again. Until now. She stared at the first tape, turning it in her gloved hands. The sticker label was peeling. There was a faint greasy film on the plastic shell. Years of decay from being sealed underground. Beside her, a technician prepped the old VHS converter setup. A battered CRT television flickered to life. The whir of the machine sounded like a breath held too long. "You sure you want to be in the room when we play this?" he asked. "I need to see," Moreno said. 8:14 a.m. Tape number 1 begins static, then a jump cut. The footage opened on a small, dimly lit room. The same pink walls, same toys, same mattress. The time code flickered in the top corner. September 2nd, 1994, 7:02 p.m. The camera was fixed, tripod mounted. No motion, just a child sitting cross-legged on the mattress. Lucas, age 5, small, sandy hair, bowl cut. He wore the same trunks and towel recovered yesterday. He didn't look scared, yet. Just confused. A man's voice, off camera. "Say your name for the tape, buddy." Lucas hesitated. "Lucas." Full name, like we practiced. "Lucas Danner." "Good boy." The voice was warm, calm, too calm. Lucas glanced around, then at the camera. "When can I go back to my mom?" "Soon. We're just going to play a few games first." Static. End of tape. 8:27 a.m. Detective Moreno's office. She sat behind her desk, reviewing the transcript, bile rising in her throat. She'd seen abuse cases before, interviewed survivors, listened to confessions that haunted her sleep. But this was different. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a documented captivity. Days, maybe weeks, of systematic manipulation. Someone had built a world under the pool to contain a child, and they'd filmed it. "This was never meant to be found," she whispered. A knock at her door broke the silence. It was Detective Ron Haskins, Monroe PD Cold Case Division. "I got something," he said, stepping inside. 3 cases between 89 and 94, all Monroe YMCA, all boys between 5 and 8, 2 ruled drownings, 1 a runaway. He handed her a folder. "I don't think Lucas was the only one." Moreno flipped through the pages. Danny Pruitt, 6. Drowned in the deep end during summer swim camp, 1989. Nico Ramos, 7. Disappeared after changing into gym clothes. Locker key number 11. James Linwood, 8. Found in utility closet, cause of death undetermined. Locker key number 12. She froze. "Lucas was locker number 14, she muttered. "You have records for number 13. "That locker was sealed off in 92, Haskins said. "Claim was plumbing issues behind the wall. No one ever checked." She looked up. "Get a warrant. We open it." 11:04 a.m. Monroe YMCA, renovation site. They stood before the rusted locker, number plate barely hanging on. Dust caked the slats. A chain had been looped through the handle and padlocked. Moreno sliced the lock with bolt cutters. Inside, the air of decades. The locker was empty, except for a sealed manila envelope, yellowed with age. No return address, just a handwritten line in red marker, MR, private, do not destroy. She opened it slowly. Inside, a single page of lined notebook paper, typed names, N. Ramos D. Pruitt, J. Linwood L. Danner, blank. Blank. Next to each name, a locker number, a date, a grade level, a final column marked cleared. Only Lucas's row wasn't checked off. "They were keeping score," Haskins said quietly. "Or planning. Moreno replied. Who's MR? 2:22 p.m. Archives Division, County Hall. A records clerk located the original staff directory for Monroe YMCA, 1994. Marcus Riyot, Assistant Director, Youth Programs. No listed address, no forwarding information. He'd resigned in late 1995, citing family health issues. No further trace. Moreno checked the digital file again. Buried in old HR notes, highly involved in facility scheduling, frequently requested after-hours access to pool area, had keys to maintenance panel and sub-basement. She circled his name, 3 p.m. Meanwhile, Wisconsin's suburbs. Marcus Riyot stood at the window of his small ranch home outside Racine, a glass of scotch trembling in his hand. He had seen the news. The Monroe YMCA, the locker key. They'd finally found it. He turned to his TV. Static. Then surveillance footage from a baby monitor. It showed a hallway, a child's bedroom door. Behind him, a woman's voice called from the kitchen. Marcus, dinner's ready. He turned off the TV, took a deep breath, and locked the hallway door behind him. 3:12 p.m. Monroe PD Moreno paced the hallway as the FBI team arrived. 2 agents, suited and serious. This case is active, she told them. We've got proof of at least 4 victims, possibly more. We've recovered video evidence of one child held underground. It's not just abduction, it's a pattern, coordinated, methodical. The taller agent, Keats, nodded. You think it was a ring? I think it was something worse, Moreno said. This wasn't made for money. These tapes were private, personalized, stored for who? For him, she said, holding up a photocopy of the YMCA staff photo. Marcus Riyot stood smiling in the back row, arms crossed. But I don't think he worked alone. 7:44 p.m. Evidence room. Another technician had begun restoring tape number 2. Moreno sat beside the screen, watching Lucas fidget with a plush toy. A voice, this time thinner, sharper. If you're good, you can pick tonight's story. Lucas, I want to go home. The voice, you are home now. Static. Then a new voice, different, lower, a second man. Is he ready? Moreno froze. Not one man, 2. She turned to the tech. Pull the audio. I want voice analysis. And someone needs to knock on every damn door Marcus Riyot ever lived behind. July 14th, 2024, 9:06 a.m. Greenridge Retirement Community, Bloomington, Indiana. Dinah Danner sat in the common lounge, a coffee cooling untouched in her hand. The sunlight through the high windows cast warm stripes across the floor, but she felt none of it. Not really. She was 61 now. Her knees cracked every time she stood. Her fingers stiffened in the morning. She hadn't been Lucas's mother in a long time, at least not out loud. Most people at Greenridge didn't know about the boy in the photos on her nightstand. They just assumed he was a grandson. They never asked. But when the knock came on her door that morning, something told her. It was time. 9:11 a.m. Interview room B. The detective introduced herself gently. Ms. Danner, I'm Detective Ela Moreno. Thank you for coming. Dana sat across the table, hands clasped in her lap. Her voice, when it came, was soft. Is this about my son? Moreno nodded. Yes, about Lucas. Dana's hands trembled. Did you find him? Moreno didn't answer right away. She opened a folder and removed 2 clear evidence bags. The first contained a child's towel, faded blue, YMCA logo half peeled. The second, a pair of tiny red swim trunks with a stitched name tag. Dana inhaled sharply. Oh, God! She pressed a hand to her mouth. Her eyes searched the plastic, seeing not just the items but the memory, packing them into his little gym bag that morning, kissing his forehead before the carpool took him. Where? She whispered. Where did you find them? Same time. Monroe. YMCA. The vault had been sealed again with crime scene tape, But the buzz outside hadn't stopped. Reporters, drones, curious locals pressing against the chain-link fence, trying to glimpse something they didn't really want to see. Inside, the scene was quiet, sterile. Detective Ron Haskins stood beside locker number 14. He held a new evidence bag. This one small, almost insignificant. A single brass key, worn, slightly bent. The locker number faintly etched into the head. Number 14. It had been found beneath the mattress, placed carefully like it was meant to be returned. "Why would he leave it?" the evidence tech asked. Haskins stared at the key. Maybe he wanted to go back. 10:12 a.m. Monroe PD. Moreno returned to the station to find her desk covered in new updates. The FBI had enhanced audio from tape number 2. A second male voice had been isolated and run through the national database. No matches yet, but analysis was ongoing. Marcus Riyot had not yet been located. An agent in Racine, Wisconsin, had been dispatched to an address linked to a 1995 utility bill under his name. They were waiting for visual confirmation. Moreno exhaled and opened the file again. Lucas's school photo stared up at her, front teeth missing, smile crooked, cheeks flushed from running on the playground moments before picture day. She flipped to the interview transcript with Dana Danner. He didn't like going to swim class. Said the locker room was too quiet. He always wanted to stay dressed and swim like that. Said it felt safer. Safer than what? Moreno had asked. Dana had stared at the wall. He didn't answer, just said the locker room had shadows. 2:44 p.m. Racine, Wisconsin. FBI Special Agent Denise Yarrow stood across the street from the small beige house. Marcus Riyot, now living under the alias Mark Rowan, had just exited the back door carrying a trash bag. He moved slowly, deliberately, kept his head down, wore gloves despite the summer heat. Yarrow tapped her earpiece. Visual confirm on target. Approaching. She crossed the street quickly, stepping into the driveway just as Marcus turned around. He froze. "Mark Roan?" she asked calmly. His mouth opened slightly. He looked past her, toward the street. "I need you to come with me," she continued. "We have some questions about Monroe, Indiana, about the YMCA." His lips moved, but no sound came. Then he ran. 2:48 p.m. Same. The pursuit lasted barely 4 blocks. Marcus stumbled crossing an alley, collapsing onto cracked pavement behind a chain-link fence. Yarrow drew her weapon but didn't point it. "On the ground," she barked. "Hands behind your back." He didn't resist. As agents cuffed him, he muttered one sentence under his breath. "I never hurt them. I just cleaned up." 4:30 p.m. Monroe PD. Interrogation Room 1. Riyot sat at the table, hair slicked back with sweat, wrists chained. His demeanor was calm now, measured. "I wasn't the one who took them," he said. "I didn't choose the kids. That was someone else." Moreno stared him down. "You built the room. You signed off on the purchases. You sealed the access panel." "I did what I was told," he said. "I was scared." "Scared of who?" Riyot exhaled, long and slow. "You're not going to believe me." "Try me." He leaned forward. "You already met him. You just don't know it yet." Moreno's blood ran cold. 6:01 p.m. Archive room. Moreno stood with Haskins in the old file archive. Dust filtered through slats of late sunlight. She pulled up a photo taken during the 1992 YMCA staff Christmas party. Riyot was in the back row, smiling awkwardly. To his left stood a man with graying temples, a pressed polo shirt, and a firm hand on Riyot's shoulder. "Name tag, Chuck D." Moreno squinted. She recognized the face. From the second voice on the tape. She turned the photo over, scribbled names listed in black pen. Chuck Danner, board president. She stared at it. Danner. The same last name as Lucas. Her hands trembled. "Oh, God," she whispered. Haskins looked at her. "You think they were related?" Moreno nodded. I think he was Lucas's uncle. 7:12 p.m. Green Ridge Retirement, Bloomington. Dana Danner sat on her porch, the brass key clutched in her hand. A memory had returned earlier, sudden and unwelcome. Her husband's older brother, Charles Danner. Chuck. He'd always been strange around Lucas, overly affectionate, insistent on giving him rides. She'd ignored it, trusted family. But now she couldn't breathe. July 15th, 2024, 8:04 a.m. Monroe PD, Digital Forensics Lab. The video was clearer than expected. Tape number 23 had been damaged on the outer reel, but the interior footage was intact, converted to digital overnight and reviewed frame by frame. Now, the lab's main screen glowed with the paused image. Lucas, curled into the far corner of the small pink room, knees to his chest. His eyes were puffy, exhausted. A stuffed bear sat beside him, the same one listed in the original case report. Lucas's favorite toy, brown bear, blue bow tie, worn fur. Detective Moreno stood behind the technician, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Play it, she said quietly. Footage begins. Time code, September 24th, 1994, 11:02 a.m. The video opened with a static shot of the room, a hollowed chamber painted pastel pink, dotted with toys and a twin mattress. Fairy lights lined the ceiling. There were no windows, no doors in view, just the walls, smooth, featureless. Lucas sat on the bed. He wasn't speaking. The camera shifted slightly, manual movement. Then came the voice, male, calm, familiar. Lucas, remember what we talked about? Lucas shook his head. The voice continued. You promised. Good boys keep promises. I don't want to do this, Lucas whispered. There was silence. Then the creak of something off camera. Wooden. The scrape of metal. Then another voice entered. Deeper this time. I said get ready. Lucas flinched visibly. Then the frame shook. Someone stepped in front of the camera, only partially visible. A man's torso. Polo shirt. Belt. Tucked-in slacks. Just a flash of a name tag glinting on his chest. Chuck. The man bent toward Lucas, reached for him. The boy screamed. The video stopped. 8:11 a.m. Forensics Lab Moreno stared at the frozen frame. Get that image blown up, she ordered. Clear as possible. I want facial reconstruction, height, build, clothing tags, everything. The technician nodded. This is the first time we see him, Moreno added. That shirt, that name tag, that's our link to Charles Danner. 11:32 a.m. FBI Field Office. Indianapolis FBI agent Keats placed the frame beside a DMV photo from 1993. Charles Chuck Danner, age 43 at the time. Head of the Monroe YMCA board. Prominent businessman. No criminal record, no accusations, until now. Keats tapped the image. Same guy. The nose, the ears, it's a match. That's him on tape 23. Another agent chimed in. You want to talk about sick? He was on a school committee, too. Volunteered at after-school programs. One of those pillar of the community types. Moreno leaned against the wall, expression tight. He was also Lucas's uncle. 1:14 p.m. Monroe PD. Interrogation Room 1. Marcus Riyot looked worse than the day before, disheveled, exhausted. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he watched the still of tape 23 on a laptop screen. That him? Moreno asked. That's Danner, right? Riyot hesitated, then nodded. He was the one who picked them. Picked who? The boys. Based on behavior, schedules. Who wouldn't be missed right away? Lucas was convenient, quiet, didn't fight. Moreno's voice turned cold. You helped. You built the room. You operated the camera. I didn't touch them, Riyot said quickly. I swear, I just made the room safe, comfortable. He told me they'd be kept clean, fed. She slammed the folder on the table. "He lied, and you let him." Riyot flinched. "He said it was love," he mumbled. "That they were chosen to be part of something sacred, something that would change everything." Moreno stared at him, stunned. "Was this some kind of cult?" Riyot shook his head. Number it was a club. 2 p.m. Cold Case Archives. Detective Ron Haskins leafed through Monroe PD's dusty missing persons files, reviewing every YMCA-related disappearance from the last 40 years. He found another name. Derek Voss, age 6. Missing, 1985. Reported by a substitute swim instructor. Body never found. Case closed due to suspected runaway. Haskins opened the incident report. At the bottom, under Witness Interviewed, was a name in fading ink. C. Danner, 4:47 p.m. Green Ridge Retirement, Bloomington. Dana Danner stood in her small apartment, unpacking a shoebox from the back of her closet. Inside, birthday cards, hair clippings, drawings Lucas had made of dinosaurs and fire trucks. And beneath them, an envelope marked Summer 1994, Lucas's YMCA bag. She opened it. Inside was a small Polaroid photo, Lucas standing in front of the YMCA entrance, wearing the red trunks and holding his bear. His smile was genuine, nervous, excited. To the left in the background, a man stood partially out of frame. Polo shirt, name tag, sunglasses. Dana squinted. She knew that shirt. She turned the photo over, in her own handwriting. July 6th, 1994, first day of swim class. Uncle Chuck dropped him off. Her hand trembled. She sat down slowly, the photo still in her lap. He'd been there from the beginning. 6:15 p.m. Monroe PD Moreno placed the photo on her desk. "It's him," she said to Haskins. He had access, authority, and the trust of the family. She pulled up the YMCA board roster from 1994. Charles Danner, President, Volunteer Head of Youth Operations, Issuer of Locker Assignments. He controlled every part of Lucas's entry into the building. "Locker number 14, Haskins said. It wasn't just random. "No," she said. "It was the final number on his list." She turned the page. The one he didn't get to finish. 7:42 p.m. Confidential memo. Internal FBI. RE. Subject: Charles Danner. Potential predator network involvement. Analysis of tape 23. Confirms Charles Danner's physical presence during abuse of Lucas Danner, aged 5. Subject has connections to at least 4 other missing persons cases involving minors from YMCA-linked locations. Discovery of logs and locker assignments suggests a systemized selection process. Investigation now includes potential links to wider group operation involving additional local figures. Current status: Charles Danner, missing. Vehicle not located. Known associates: Marcus Riyot. Custody: Matthew Strake, unaccounted for. Unnamed third party, secondary voice on tapes 10, 23, and 27. 9:03 p.m. Surveillance footage recovered. A time-stamped video from a gas station 3 towns over. A silver 1995 Lincoln Town car pulls up to pump 6. The driver caught briefly in the mirror. Glasses, gray temples, calm demeanor. Confirmed. Charles Danner. He pays in cash. He's gone before the trace system even flags his name. 9:45 p.m. Monroe PD Moreno stared at the whiteboard in the evidence room. Lucas Danner. Tape 1 to 48. 4 other victims, 2 confirmed deaths. 1 sealed locker, 1 empty chamber, 1 man still missing, and at the center, Chuck Danner. Family. She circled his name again, then underlined it, twice. July 16th, 2024, 6:14 a.m. Monroe, Indiana, Riverside Cemetery. The headstones were modest, their inscriptions worn by time and weather. Detective Ron Haskins stood before 3 graves arranged in a row. Danny Pruitt, 1983 to 1989. Nico Ramos, 1984 to 1991, James Linwood. 1982 to 1992, all were once listed as tragic losses. One by drowning, one by presumed runaway, and one found dead in a YMCA utility closet with no clear cause. All had once passed through the Monroe YMCA, and now all were tied to Charles Danner. He knelt and brushed dirt from the base of James Linwood's stone. The boy's photo was embedded in porcelain, a bright, gap-toothed smile frozen in time. They never had a chance. He stood slowly, hands on his hips. The July morning was thick with dew and the rising heat of another cloudless day, the kind of day when the pool would have been full of children. 8:22 a.m., Monroe PD. Evidence Review Room Detective Ela Moreno stood before a grid of labeled VHS tapes, now converted to digital. FBI analysts had identified clear audio on 32 of them, visible interaction on 17, and physical abuse on at least 12. Lucas appeared in 48 total. And now another boy had been identified in 2 of the earliest tapes, Nico Ramos, last seen leaving a YMCA locker room in 1991. His name hadn't appeared on any lists. His case was closed, ruled a runaway. But now they knew. He'd been taken, and he'd been filmed. 10:13 a.m., Ramos' family home, 40 minutes outside Monroe. The front door opened to reveal Mrs. Inez Ramos, now in her 60s, eyes sunken with age and a lifetime of sorrow. Her hand trembled as she accepted the manila envelope from the FBI liaison. Inside, 2 still images from the recovered tapes. One showed Nico playing with blocks, another curled up on a mattress that looked identical to Lucas's room. Same corner layout, same wall scribbles, different name. Nico Room, Day 2, written on the label. She looked up, her voice cracked. I always knew he didn't run. 12:45 p.m., Monroe PD, Riyot's interrogation, Day 3. Marcus Riyot had stopped pretending. He no longer denied the tapes, no longer claimed innocence. But he did claim something else. There were more, he said. More what? Moreno asked, arms folded. More children. Not many. Not all from Monroe. They moved them sometimes. Between buildings. Buildings, she repeated. Riyot nodded. There was a second location, somewhere near the river, a private building, not YMCA owned. He called it the dry pool. Moreno jotted it down. Did you ever go there? He hesitated. Then, only once. It was darker. No decorations. It wasn't for playing. She pressed. Were there other adults? He looked her dead in the eyes. Yes. Names. I didn't know them all, but one was called Tenko. He brought the equipment, the lights. He filmed things. Even Danner wouldn't. 2:33 p.m. State licensing records. 1990s. Agent Keats scanned the records of YMCA vendors, staff, and subcontractors from 1988 to 1996. The name Matthew Tenko didn't appear on official staff lists, but under custodial contractors, Tenko Lighting and Supply. Filed 1990 to dissolved 1997 location, Riverside Industrial Park, Building 6B. He tapped his radio. Moreno, we found the dry pool. 4:20 p.m. Riverside Industrial Park, Building 6. The building was a squat concrete structure surrounded by rusted fencing and broken asphalt. Old signage had long since faded, replaced by graffiti and overgrowth, but a side panel still bore a trace of white letters. TLS, Tenko Lighting and Supply. Officers pried the door open. Inside, dust. Silence. A smell of mold and cold rot. The interior was cavernous. One main room subdivided by hanging tarps and plywood partitions. A workbench still littered with film reels. Power cables coiled like snakes. And along the far wall, a door painted pale pink. The words scrawled across it chilled everyone present. Princess Room. Volume 62 in progress. 4:51 p.m. Inside the princess room. The space was narrow, more industrial than the YMCA room. No soft toys, no blankets. A metal bed frame bolted to the wall, a single light fixture overhead. A wall-mounted camera aimed squarely at the center of the room. On the floor, VHS tapes, some labeled, others blank, and beneath the bed, bones, a small skull, fragments of ribs, a child's jaw with 2 remaining teeth. Moreno turned away, her eyes burning. "Bag everything, we get ID fast, now." 5:42 p.m. Monroe PD. Dana Danner's residence. Moreno arrived at Dana's apartment after dark, her voice quiet and careful. "We've found another location. Your brother-in-law, Charles, he helped run it." Dana didn't respond right away. She sat in silence, the photo of Lucas still in her hand. Then she whispered, "He was always the one who'd offer to drive Lucas, to help with practice. My husband thought he was being generous. I thought—" She looked up, eyes hollow. "I didn't think anything. That was the problem." Moreno reached out. "What he did, what they all did, this wasn't your fault." Dana nodded slowly. "But I let him near my child, and now I can't stop wondering what happened after the last tape." 7:03 p.m. Monroe PD, evidence room. Tape number 48 was queued up, labeled Lucas, Final. Moreno watched as the screen flickered to life. Lucas sat on the mattress, eyes vacant. His hands were folded in his lap. A voice, Danner's, spoke softly. "Do you remember the promise, Lucas?" The boy didn't answer. "Today's the last one. After this, you get to go outside. Wouldn't that be nice?" Lucas blinked. His voice was quiet. "I want to see my mom." Danner's voice paused. "She's not ready for you yet." Lucas looked at the camera, directly into the lens. Then the screen went black. 7:06 p.m. Back to present. Moreno stood in silence. The video burned into her memory. That was the last known footage of Lucas Danner. No body had ever been found. But in a moment, just before the tape ended, Lucas looked into the camera with something that hadn't been there before. Recognition. As if, in that final second, he understood what was happening. And he wanted someone, anyone, to see him. 9 p.m. Meanwhile, unknown location. In a motel 2 counties east, a man sat on the edge of a bed, staring at the blank TV screen. He wore glasses, gray stubble, a YMCA polo shirt, faded from years in storage. Beside him, a duffel bag, cash, tapes. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette. On the table, a photograph. Lucas Danner, age 5. Next to it, a newspaper clipping. Lucas's uncle named as suspect in abuse ring. Charles Danner exhaled smoke slowly, watching the plume curl toward the ceiling fan. He folded the photo, slipped it into his wallet, then picked up the duffel and walked out the door. July 17th, 2024, 9:14 a.m. Monroe YMCA, East Locker Wing, sealed section. The metal screeched as the locker door peeled open. Rust flaked into the air, curling off the hinges like dried blood. The inside was blackened with mildew, but what mattered now wasn't what the eye saw. It was what the smell revealed. It hit like a wave. Sharp, organic. The odor of something that had once been alive and never meant to be found. Detective Isla Moreno stepped back, hand over her nose. "Jesus." Crime scene technician Robbins moved in with a handheld flashlight and UV wand. Inside, the remains of a plastic storage tote, cracked lid, warped from pressure and time. And something else. A child's jacket, faded red, the fabric matted and curled. On the inside, near the collar, someone had written a name in faded laundry marker. Nico. Moreno's stomach turned. "He was in here the whole time?" Robbins shook his head. "Number, the tote's too small. The bones weren't here. But this, This was a marker, a keepsake like a hunter's tag. He held up a second item, a photograph, folded twice. Unfolded, it revealed two boys on a swim deck, Lucas and Nico, side by side, smiling. Behind them stood Charles Danner, one hand on each shoulder. His face was cut out, deliberately removed with a blade. 11:01 a.m., Monroe PD. Audio lab tape number 19 had been flagged for enhanced analysis due to overlapping voices. The primary speaker was Danner, but now, using advanced frequency isolation, they heard another voice. Lower, nasal, muttering behind the main conversation. Words identified. Clear locker 13 first. Move the red one to dry pool. No more talking in the echo zone. Mike picks it up. Detective Haskins rewound the segment, turning to Moreno. Whoever that second voice is, he knew they were being recorded. He knew about sound bleed. That's someone technical. Moreno frowned. Riyot said Tenko handled the equipment. Could be him. Could be another. But they weren't just abusing these kids. They were organizing them. 2:17 p.m. FBI database. Internal memorandum. Subject, Matthew Tenko. Expanded profile, former AV technician. Contracted with private schools, YMCAs, and correctional facilities between 1989 to 1998. Arrested in 1999 for possession of illegal material. Case dismissed on procedural error. Last known address: Riverside Drive, Monroe, 5 blocks from the YMCA, declared deceased in 2003. No body recovered. House fire ruled accidental. Note: re-examination of death certificate recommended. Foul play now suspected. 4:04 p.m., Monroe PD. Interrogation room 3. Marcus Riyot hunched forward, visibly thinner after days of custody. He hadn't spoken in hours, until they placed the photograph of locker 13 in front of him. He looked at the jacket, the name. His lips parted. He told me it was handled. Who? Moreno asked. Tenko. He said Nico got sick, too loud, too uncooperative. Said he couldn't risk the others hearing. Riyot swallowed. So they put him in there. To wait. And when he died, they called it clearing. 5:21 p.m. Monroe PD. Victim board update. Moreno drew a red line between Nico Ramos and locker 13. Between Charles Danner and Matthew Tenko. Between James Linwood and an unmarked entry logged as V33/JL/incomplete. One case remained unsolved. Derek Voss. 1985. The earliest name tied to Danner. She circled the name, then underlined it. We're still missing someone. 6:35 p.m. Greenridge Retirement. Dinah Danner's apartment. Dana opened the front door without a word. Moreno stepped inside, carrying a small box. We found more, she said gently. Dana didn't ask what. She just nodded, hands trembling as she opened the lid. Inside, Lucas's bear. Recovered from the dry pool site. The bow tie was torn. The stitching along the back had been re-sewn, unevenly. Dinah held it to her chest. I used to patch this for him every week. She looked up, tears welling. Do you know if he died in that room? Moreno paused. Number, we don't know that yet. We haven't found remains. Dana nodded. But you found what he lived in? Yes, Dana whispered. Then you found enough. 8:04 p.m. FBI forensics trailer, YMCA site. Inside a mobile unit set up beside the drained pool, technicians ran trace analysis on new evidence. One tech called out, We have partial prints on the camera gear from the dry pool site, old, degraded, but consistent with Tenko's known prints. Another tech added, And there's a new sample, blood, human, found beneath the floor panel. Testing for DNA now. A buzzer went off. Match found. Subject, Derek Voss. 9:17 p.m. Riverside Drive, burned property lot. A cadaver dog unit deployed across the overgrown, ash-covered lot where Tenko's house had once stood. The dog paused near the southern edge, began digging. Minutes later, the team unearthed a plastic crate. Inside, VHS tapes, burned around the edges, and bones. Too small to be adult. The fire hadn't just destroyed the house. It had covered up another room, 10:41 p.m., FBI briefing room, Monroe PD. A new list was written on the board. Confirmed victims: Lucas Danner, survived captivity, status uncertain. Nico Ramos, deceased, confirmed Danny Pruitt. Presumed drowned, now reopened, James Linwood, deceased, cause, undetermined Derek Voss. DNA confirmed unknown female. Locker number 7, unaccounted. Haskins stared at the last line. Who was she? Moreno said nothing. Then whispered, "That's the next door we knock on." 11:12 p.m. Motel surveillance. 2 counties over. The motel clerk handed over footage from earlier in the day. A silver town car pulled in just before sunset. License plates removed. The man wore a baseball cap, glasses, no luggage, just a duffel and a briefcase. Timestamp, 5:43 p.m. Checked in under the name Ray Carlton. Paid cash. Room 217. Moreno looked up at Keats. "We're close." Keats nodded. "But if he runs again, we may never find him." Moreno stepped back out into the humid night, eyes on the darkened horizon. "Then we don't let him run." July 18th, 2024, 8:42 a.m. Monroe PD, holding interview room. Marcus Riyot hadn't slept. He sat under fluorescent lights, pale and jittery, eyes rimmed in red. A styrofoam coffee cup trembled in his hand, leaving dark rings on the table. He hadn't spoken since they showed him the remains from the Riverside lot. When he finally did, his voice cracked with something between guilt and dread. "I was only supposed to record," he said. "That's all. Set up lighting. Make sure the sound wasn't too loud." Detective Isla Moreno said nothing. She slid a printed image across the table. It was Lucas, age 5, curled on a pink mattress, thumb in his mouth, eyes glassy. The time code read September 24th, 1994, 11:06 a.m. Riyot winced. "Danner wanted volume," he muttered. "Wanted to document everything. Memories, he called it. For the archive, Moreno's voice was tight. Archive. There was a whole cabinet. Tapes, logbooks, notes. All dated, all organized by initials and room versions. He labeled them Princess Room, but the files used codes. He glanced up, haunted. "I never opened them. I couldn't." 10:03 a.m. FBI Task Force briefing room. A whiteboard dominated the front wall, scrawled with the names of victims, locations, and confirmed perpetrators. Known offenders: Charles Danner. Fugitive Marcus Riyot. In custody Matthew Tenko, presumed dead in 2003 fire, now suspicious. Unknown male, second voice. Appears on tapes 10, 19, 23. Possibly more. Moreno stood at the front, laser-focused. "We now have 5 deceased or missing children linked to this network. Danner oversaw the YMCA site. Tenko built the Riverside location. Riyot managed filming, lighting, and vault construction." She pointed to the board. "We believe Danner created the Princess Room concept, using it as code for his fantasy. There are likely others who adopted that terminology, possibly in different towns, states." Agent Keats added, "Interpol reports cases under similar language. Across Europe, the phrase princess file has appeared in underground distribution hubs, nearly always tied to long-term child confinement cases." The room fell silent. Moreno said, "This didn't start with Danner, and it may not end with him." 12:14 p.m. Monroe PD, evidence room. Detective Haskins examined an evidence bag marked Recovered Journal, M. Riyot, 1996. Inside, a red notebook. FBI analysts had missed it at first, buried in personal belongings from Riyot's attic. It contained fragmented entries, written in shaky cursive, disjointed, paranoid. July 3rd, 1995. He brought in a new one. Smaller, said she was a trial. Locker 7, said it'd be quick. I didn't ask where she came from. Didn't want to know. August 1st, she screamed for days. He told me to soundproof the lower panels. August 3rd. She's gone now, but the walls still hum at night. I think I'm losing it. Haskins flipped to the last page. Only one sentence. There are more of us. 2:40 p.m. Public Records Archive. Monroe County, Moreno requested blueprints for all YMCA expansion permits filed between 1980 and 2000. Only 2 matched the Monroe building. One for a utility upgrade in 1986, another for locker room reinforcement in 1993. But then she found an anomaly. In 1992, the assistant director filed an internal memo requesting special funds for below-ground storage improvements, never submitted to county zoning, signed by M. Riyot, co-signed by C. Danner. She circled it. They'd started planning the vault 2 years before Lucas vanished. 5:12 p.m., Marcus Riyot's final statement. With legal counsel present, Riyot gave a formal recorded testimony. He outlined how Danner first approached him in 1991, offering money and creative freedom to help build something private. He claimed he didn't know what it was for at first. By the time I did, he said, I was complicit. He described the princess room as a performance stage, where the subjects were filmed for private use. He had rules, Riyot added. Age caps, behavior thresholds. It was all ritual to him. He believed the tapes had meaning, like cataloging purity. He buried his face in his hands. He never saw them as children, just roles. 7:41 p.m. FBI National Database. New entry created case. Name, Operation Princess Room. Primary suspect, Charles Danner. Alias, unknown. Modus operandi, abduction of children ages 5 to 8. Long-term confinement in fabricated child-themed rooms. Documentation via VHS and VCD. Network distribution suspected. Caution. Subject may use religious, academic, or child care fronts. Has history of psychological manipulation and constructing false identities. May be targeting small towns with aging YMCA-type facilities or repurposed rec centers. Last seen, Monroe, Indiana, July 15, 2024. Vehicle, silver, 1995, Lincoln Town car, plates removed. 9:03 p.m. Small town gas station, Illinois border surveillance footage. Charles Danner exits his car, pays in cash, wearing a clerical collar, carries a book of sermons and a lunchbox. License plate now shows an out-of-state vanity tag, REVHOPE. He smiles at the clerk, asks if there's a church nearby in need of a handyman, leaves a generous tip, drives away. 10:17 p.m., Greenridge Retirement. Dana Danner sat on the edge of her bed, Lucas's bear in her lap. The stitching had begun to come loose again. She didn't bother fixing it this time. She opened her phone, scrolled through news alerts, then froze. FBI, fugitive child predator posing as traveling minister. New images released of Charles Danner in disguise. Warning, do not approach. Considered manipulative and dangerous. She tapped the screen, enlarged the photo. He still looked the same, only older, more patient, and still smiling, like nothing had ever happened. July 19, 2024, 6:30 a.m. Outside Goshen, Indiana, abandoned summer campgrounds. The chain-link fence surrounding Camp Morning Trail sagged inward like the land itself had given up. Once a bustling summer haven in the 70s and 80s, the camp had shuttered after an unexplained maintenance issue in 1998. Since then, the cabins had collapsed into their own rot, and the pool, according to the record Moreno now held in her hand, was Never drained, just sealed. That was what caught her attention. Unsealed pools were common in abandoned properties. But sealed pools? Poured concrete over water? That suggested someone had something to hide. 7:04 a.m. The drained pool. They'd brought in ground radar first. It pinged a chamber underneath. Now a team in hazmat gear drilled into the concrete, layer by layer. By hour 3, the dull, wet thump beneath the jackhammer told everyone what they already suspected. It wasn't just water below. Moreno stood at the edge as the last of the debris was cleared. She watched as a floodlight was lowered into the hole. The chamber below was no pool. It was a room. Child-sized bed frame, pink-painted concrete walls, a small bookshelf with decayed storybooks. Written in crayon along one wall, just above the mold line. Lucy Room, V47, 9:35 a.m., Monroe PD, Victim Board Update. Moreno wrote the new name at the bottom. Lucy Hightower, age 6, missing since 1997. Reported missing by a babysitter who later disappeared as well. Case dismissed as a probable parental custody violation. No Amber Alert issued. Now her name was in red. She turned to Haskins. This wasn't just Lucas. This wasn't just Monroe. Haskins nodded. This was a pattern, a circuit, a system. Moreno tapped the V47 marking on the wall photo. 47 rooms, 47 tapes, and he was still building. 11:01 a.m. FBI Satellite Office, Cold Case Digitization Unit. The archivist slid over a tape from the Goshen find. Unmarked, dusty, but intact. Dated July 16, 1997. They queued it up. The camera shook before focusing. A little girl sat cross-legged on a concrete floor. Blonde, skinny, clutching a plastic tiara. She looked up when a male voice entered. It wasn't Danner. It wasn't Riyot. The voice was calm, quieter. Lucy, what's the rule when someone new arrives? The girl answered, no screaming. Smile for the light. 12:44 p.m. Interview room. Marcus Riyot Moreno slid a still photo across the table. Lucy in the pink room. Riyot didn't flinch. That's not one of mine, he said immediately. Then whose was it? He shook his head. I don't know, but I remember the name. Danner said Lucy was the one who learned too fast. He said she made eye contact. Why did that matter? Riyot looked away. It scared him. 3:10 p.m. Goshen Coroner's Office remains were extracted from beneath the false pool. Bones of a child, female, age estimate between 6 and 7. DNA results pending. In her hand, a tiara, bent and crusted with lichen. A small plastic jewel missing from the center. But it was the wall that told the final story. Scribbled drawings, stick figures holding hands, a crude crown, a child-sized bed drawn in red. And in the center, she promised to come back for me. The writing stopped abruptly. 5:30 p.m., Monroe PD. Digital composite analysis technicians overlaid multiple frames from different room tapes. Angles, reflections, structural alignment. One conclusion, all the princess rooms were built to spec. Same measurements, same lighting rig, same bed orientation, same door. Someone had provided a blueprint. 6:15 p.m. Green Ridge Retirement, Dana Danner's apartment. Dana watched old home videos on a tiny screen. Lucas laughing at a birthday cake. Lucas running in circles with a balloon tied to his wrist. She paused the video. Behind him, in the backyard, a man standing near the fence. Zoomed in, the face was blurry, but the polo shirt was unmistakable. A YMCA staff badge, partially visible, and the lanyard color? Red, like the one Charles Danner wore in the photo recovered from the locker. She pressed her finger to the screen. You were always watching. 7:50 p.m. Monroe PD, Joint Task Force briefing. Moreno stood beside a projected map showing 5 red pins. Monroe, in. Original YMCA site Riverside Industrial Lot. Dry Pool Goshen, Inn, Abandoned Camp Morning Trail Stillwater, Kentucky. Former Boy Scout Outpost, under review. Winfield, Illinois. Church Rec Center burned down in 1994. Each site had evidence of sealed chambers, similar construction patterns, and varying degrees of concealment. This was never about a single town, she said. It was a regional circuit, possibly national. Danner wasn't just participating. He was training others. Keats chimed in. We think he was distributing blueprints, protocols, teaching how to mimic innocence while building rooms underground. Moreno circled Stillwater, and if he was training them, he may still be visiting them. 10:21 p.m. Surveillance shot. Rest stop on I-55. Missouri camera footage. Grainy but clear. The silver Lincoln pulled into a trucker's lane. Danner stepped out, now wearing a priest's collar and carrying a child's backpack. He entered the building, returned minutes later with a paper map and bottled water. He circled something on the dashboard. A red pen. The camera zoomed in. The map? Iowa. The town circled? Fairchild. 11:17 p.m. FBI secure line call. Keats to Moreno. We just pulled property records. Guess who purchased a former Montessori daycare in Fairchild last year? Moreno. Don't say it. Keats. Under a false name. E. Ray Carlton. Same name he used at the motel. Pause. Moreno. Then we're not chasing him anymore. She stared out the window of her unlit office. We're heading into his next build. July 20th, 2024, 7:44 a.m. Fairchild, Iowa. Abandoned Montessori property. The daycare sat at the edge of a dying cornfield, shuttered for over a decade. Weeds cracked through the pavement. Plastic play structures stood warped and sun-bleached in the yard like forgotten sculptures. But inside, everything was new. The front lobby had been renovated with laminate floors, the walls repainted in pastel blues, crayon drawings taped neatly, labels in childish handwriting, reading corner, nap time, snack spot. There were no children, no staff, just one set of fresh footprints leading in and out through the back exit. Moreno crouched by the welcome rug. Someone's here, or was, very recently. Keats motioned toward the hallway. Back room's locked, deadbolt from the outside. 8:12 a.m. Inside the basement. The lock gave after 2 hits with the battering ram. Below the floorboards, a descending staircase that shouldn't exist. No blueprint mentioned a basement, but the princess room was there, intact, cleaner than the others, freshly painted. Mattress still wrapped in plastic. Walls marked only with a single name, written neatly in red crayon. Allie. A pair of small shoes sat by the corner. Pink jelly sandals. One still had a price tag hanging off it. Moreno's voice came soft. He's preparing it. Keats walked the perimeter, flashlight scanning the seams. No camera yet. No restraints. It's like a showroom model. On a table by the far wall, a manual, spiral-bound, homemade. Title page read, Program Guide, Phase 4/ER Carlton, 9:40 a.m., Monroe PD, Digital Scanning Lab. The spiral-bound manual was scanned, indexed, and dissected. Inside were dozens of typed pages. Floor plans, soundproofing methods, child psychology strategies, behavior charts. And this, always begin with trust. Create a consistent daily routine. Introduce isolation slowly. Associate silence with reward. Phase 2. Begin character roleplay. Princess, explorer, angel. Rotate identities until bonding occurs. Phase 3. Reinforce with repetition. Record everything. Moreno stared at the diagram. He wasn't hiding his sickness anymore. He was systematizing it. 11:12 a.m. Monroe FBI office. Task Force meeting Keats addressed the team. We now have evidence that Charles Danner, using the alias E. Ray Carlton, was actively preparing a new site for captivity. Based on journal entries and timeline estimates, we believe the next abduction would have occurred within 7 days. Moreno added, "He's evolving. More careful. More deliberate." This room had no mistakes. A forensic tech entered with a folder. We finished dusting the daycare. He laid out a single page, a fingerprint match. Danner. Confirmed. Another page, fibers from the mattress. Hair, female. Age 5 to 7. No match yet, but that meant someone had already been in the room. 1:30 p.m. Keokuk County Sheriff's Office. A call came in from a local woman. She'd seen the news bulletin, recognized the face. "Yeah," she said. "He came by our church last week. Said his name was Reverend Ray. Asked if we needed help with Sunday school." She hesitated. "He brought a little girl with him. Said she was his niece. Blonde, shy." "What was her name?" the officer asked. "I think he called her Allie." 3:15 p.m. FBI Missing Persons Unit. A quick search turned up a new missing child case filed 3 days ago from Burlington, Iowa. Allison Allie Dwyer, age 6, last seen Sunday afternoon, outside her grandmother's farmhouse. Circumstances: wandered out back to play, never returned, Amber Alert. Delayed due to custodial miscommunication. Moreno looked up. She's real, and she was with him. 4:22 p.m. FBI Interstate Manhunt Protocol activated target, Charles Danner. Alias, E. Ray Carlton. Vehicle silver, 1995. Lincoln Town car victim in custody. Allison Dwyer, 6 years old. Threat level critical 6:08 p.m. Fairchild, Iowa. Surveillance dash cam. A sheriff's unit spotted the town car parked behind an abandoned hardware store, 8 miles from the daycare site. The passenger seat was empty. The trunk, locked. But there were smudges, child-sized, on the inside of the rear window. When agents approached, the vehicle was cold, recently abandoned. A doll sat in the back seat, a plastic tiara beside it, and on the driver's seat, a handwritten note. She was too loud. I'll try again. 7:41 p.m. Wooded Ravine, 1.2 miles south. K9 units picked up a trail along the riverbank. At 7:53 p.m., a faint whimper was heard. By 8:01, they found her. Allison Dwyer, alive, shivering beneath a plastic tarp, bruised, dehydrated, but conscious. When Moreno reached her, Allie's first words were, "Is the room gone?" 10:22 p.m. Monroe PD. Holding room. Allie sat on a couch wrapped in a thermal blanket, sipping warm water. A therapist sat nearby. No questions yet, just comfort. But she volunteered one detail. "He made me pretend, said I was going to be someone else soon, like one of the princesses." She looked at the wall. "But I told him I wanted to go home." Moreno whispered, "You're going home now." Allie nodded, then looked down at the bear they'd given her. "Do they all get to go home?" Moreno didn't answer, because the truth was, most of them never had the chance. July 21st, 2024, 8:06 a.m., Monroe PD, Evidence Vault. The FBI's tech team was almost finished cataloging the final box from the Riverside lot when they found it. A single VHS cassette, unlabeled. Not blank, not logged. Just sitting between 2 files marked Lucas Day 3 and Nico Post-Session. It had never been listed in Riyot's notes, had never been referenced in the Princess Room manual. This tape wasn't supposed to exist, and when they played it, nothing made sense. 8:19 a.m., Digital Playback Room. The screen flickered. Footage opened with static, then cut to a handheld angle. The room looked wrong. The bed was gone. The walls had no drawings. The camera shook violently before settling. A boy stood in the center of the floor. Not Lucas, Not Nico. Older, maybe 10. He looked directly into the lens. My name is Jeremy. I don't know where I am. The voice behind the camera wasn't Danner, or Riyot, or Tenko. It was a woman. She spoke gently, almost rehearsed. It's okay, Jeremy. Just like we practiced. Then the screen cut to black. 9:07 a.m. Cold Case Division cross-referencing. The name Jeremy triggered a cascade of searches. Jeremy Callan, age 10, reported missing July 14, 1990. Goshen, Indiana. Originally ruled as a runaway. No body ever found. Case closed after 1 year. Family moved away in 92. What disturbed Moreno more was this. Jeremy was never mentioned in any princess room logs, but he fit the profile. Just not the age range. She asked the team to rewind, slow the footage. Something was wrong with the lighting. The shadows flickered. 10:11 a.m. FBI audio analysis. They ran sound isolation on the tape. Beyond Jeremy's voice and the woman's calm directions, another sound bled through. Footsteps, heavy, not in the room, above it. Then chains, dragging. The woman's voice suddenly cut to a whisper. Hurry! We only have a few minutes. Then static again. 11 a.m. Interview room. Marcus Riyot Moreno slid the frame across the table. Recognize him? Riyot squinted. Shook his head. That's not one of ours. You're sure? He nodded slowly. Too old. Danner wouldn't allow anyone over 8. She leaned in. But someone else would. 12:44 p.m. Forensics lab. The lab called in urgently. They'd isolated a partial face in the mirrored surface of a toy in the corner of the room on the Jeremy tape. It wasn't Danner. It was a woman. Dark hair, wire glasses, late 40s, and another reflection, barely visible in the far wall's corner. A second child, watching, 2:30 p.m., archived personnel records, 1980 to 1995, YMCA Moreno cross-checked Monroe, Goshen, and Stillwater staff rosters, and there it was. Evelyn Parish, Assistant Director, Goshen YMCA, 1987 to 1991. Fired quietly after parent complaints about inappropriate restrictions during nap time. No charges filed, relocated to Kansas, then vanished. But a utilities record showed she paid for a P.O. box in Iowa as recently as 3 months ago. 5:20 p.m. Anonymous tip line recording. A voicemail came in at Monroe PD. Woman. Older voice. Shaky. He wasn't the first, Charles. There were others before him. He copied what we started, made it worse. He wanted to film everything, but we just wanted to shape them. Jeremy wasn't supposed to remember. That wasn't the plan. I never hurt them. I just prepared them. No name. But they ran the voice print. Probable match. Evelyn Parish. 6:52 p.m. FBI map room. A new node was added to the network. E. Parish. Original methodology architect. Hypothesis, the princess room design, its rituals, language, psychological prep. Originated with her. Danner took it further, industrialized it, turned a system into a market. Keats looked over the board. If she's out there, she's either scared or grooming her next subject. Moreno stared at Jeremy's frame again. The child's eyes held something none of the others did. Awareness. And maybe that was why he was never logged. Maybe he escaped. 8:03 p.m. Goshen. Abandoned library microfilm archive. Keats and a field agent found an unmarked article from 1991. A boy discovered wandering the woods outside Camp Morning Trail. No ID. Wouldn't speak. Said only one word. Mirror. Placed into state care. No match ever found. Listed as John Doe number 47G. Keats stood silently, then whispered, Jeremy survived. 9:44 p.m. Monroe PD, secure line. Moreno placed a call to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She read the case ID. Jeremy Callan, 1990. We believe he was never fully processed. He may have been in your system under a different name." The operator paused, then read a file. "Possible match. Boy found in 1991, renamed, adopted, currently lives in Michigan." Moreno felt her pulse quicken. "Does he remember?" Another pause. "He contacted us last year, said he remembered a room without a door. 11 p.m., Lansing, Michigan, apartment complex." A man in his early 40s stared at the screen as the news played. "Child found alive in Iowa, linked to multi-state confinement network." He shut off the TV, walked to a drawer, pulled out a photograph. It showed him, age 10, standing next to a woman with wire glasses. The photo had been torn once, taped back together. Jeremy Callan sat down and picked up the phone. July 22nd, 2024, 9:03 a.m., Lansing, Michigan, apartment 2. B. Jeremy Callan had waited 34 years to say it out loud. "I remember the way the lights buzzed," he told Agent Keats. "There was a hum, always just above your head, like the room had its own voice." He sat at his kitchen table, fingers trembling around a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. "I thought it was a hospital at first. The room was white, and the woman wore scrubs. She told me I'd been rescued, that my parents were in danger, that she was keeping me safe." He looked up at Keats. "She wasn't keeping me safe." 9:44 a.m. Jeremy's interview, FBI field recording. "She made me call her Mother Parish. Said she used to work at a place that made children better. Not healed, better. She didn't hurt me. Not directly. But the rules, they chipped away at who I was. No mirrors, no clocks, no sharp corners. I could speak only when given a phrase. 'May I be seen?' That was the line. She wrote it down. There was a whole book. I think it was called Refinement. She said the others were watching." Jeremy paused on the tape, then said something that changed the case. Danner came later. 11:10 a.m., FBI timeline board. New connections, Keats updated the whiteboard. Parish ran early-stage behavioral rooms under a belief she was protecting children from moral decay. Danner joined her operation circa 1990. Tenko introduced surveillance and physical constraints. Riyot organized the documentation. The princess rooms evolved from Parish's refinement chambers. Moreno stared at the board. "She wasn't just grooming kids. She was grooming collaborators." 1:20 p.m. Jeremy's recovered journal pages, 1991 to 1992. Jeremy had written his memories in a locked notebook as a teenager, which he kept hidden in a shoebox beneath his bed. Some entries were cryptic, others painfully clear. May 12th. She told me to rename myself. I chose Gray. She said it meant I was in between. June 1st. I saw another kid. In the hallway. He was crying and his room was blue. She said I wasn't ready to meet him yet. July 7th. Danner visited. He smelled like bleach and leather. Told me I had camera eyes. She laughed like it was a compliment. August 20th. She said I graduated, but no one came to pick me up. I walked into the woods, just kept walking. He ran until someone found him 2 days later, placed in foster care. Adopted, never matched, until now. 3:03 p.m. Monroe PD. Voice print confirmation FBI text matched the anonymous voicemail to a known voice sample recorded in 1989. Evelyn Parish, reading training materials to a class of junior YMCA counselors. The cadence was identical. She was alive, likely mobile, possibly watching. 4:11 p.m. National Database Alert. A gas station clerk in Kansas City flagged a suspicious customer. Elderly woman, wire glasses, paid in cash, driving a beige van with paper tags, accompanied by a young girl with a blank stare. Moreno dispatched teams immediately. They found the van abandoned near a rest stop restroom. Inside, a folded note. You never understood the point. It was never about control. It was about clarity. The noise of the world must be removed. It was signed, Mother P., 6:26 p.m. Monroe PD, Jeremy with Dana Danner. Moreno arranged a private meeting. Jeremy wanted to see Dana Danner. "I'm not your son," he said softly, "but I was in the same kind of room." Dana took his hand. "You made it out. That means something." Jeremy nodded. "I think he wanted us to carry it forward. The silence, the fear. But I remembered my name. That's how I broke it." He looked at Dana, eyes shining. "Maybe Lucas did too." 7:40 p.m. FBI Field Unit, Missouri border. A second van was found in a cornfield. Inside, maps, plastic tiaras, labeled folders. One folder read, "Candidates, Phase 5." 10 photographs, children, school portraits. Every one of them lived within 100 miles of the latest abandoned site. They were already being watched. 9:02 p.m. Late-night press conference FBI spokesperson. "We believe Charles Danner and Evelyn Parish were part of a structured psychological conditioning ring spanning at least 4 states and involving multiple facilities. The abduction and programming of minors was not just filmed. It was institutionalized. We are coordinating with global agencies to identify blueprints and protocol documents found in this case. This is far from over." 10:58 p.m. Jeremy's apartment. Jeremy turned on his old tape recorder, pressed play. The tape hissed. It was his own voice. Younger, shaky. "My name is Jeremy Callan. If you find this..." "I remembered." He rewound it, pressed play again. "My name is Jeremy Callan." And for the first time in decades, he didn't feel invisible. July 24th, 2024, 6:15 a.m. Outside St. Cloud, Minnesota. Abandoned school for the deaf. The building was barely standing, bricks crumbling, ivy clawing up the windows, the roof sagging like an old man's back. It was never officially closed, only reclassified in the mid-90s. But for the past 2 decades, it had been left off every federal property list, which made it the perfect place to hide one last room. Moreno stood at the rusted front door, gun drawn. Behind her, a tactical FBI entry team. Inside, everything they'd found over the past 12 days pointed here. The original architectural schematics, the coded map from the van, the final tape Jeremy had remembered seeing. The final room wasn't just another princess room. It was where it all began. 6:40 a.m. Entry breach. They found the passage behind the boiler. A narrow stairwell, lined with blacked-out mirrors and peeling stickers. Smiling suns, alphabet letters, stick-figure princesses. The deeper they went, the quieter the world above became. Cell signals vanished. The air turned metallic. At the bottom, a single, heavy door. The words, Phase 0, were carved into the steel. They opened it and walked into hell. 6:47 a.m., inside the final room. Unlike the others, this room was not painted in pastels. It was gray, windowless, stark, but it bore signs of evolution, versions of every previous room layered on top of each other. Reinforced walls, electrical sockets sealed shut, camera mounts in every corner, and in the center, a bed with restraints. Fresh restraints. Still warm. Moreno's heart thundered. They were minutes late. 7:02 a.m. Adjacent control room Keats powered up the main terminal. The screens flickered to life. One displayed a map with 4 blinking dots, each marked with initials, LD, AD, JC, SG, Lucas, Allie, Jeremy, one unknown. But only one was still blinking. SG, active a 5th child, still missing, still alive. Moreno leaned over the screen. Track that signal now. 7:15 a.m. Audio playback recovered. They found a hard drive. Labeled Echo Archive MP. Voices filled the speakers. But not children, adults, Danner, Parish, Tenko, Riyot. Others unknown, planning, testing, creating. Phase 0 isn't about the child, it's about the handler. We remove the world, then give it back on our terms. What happens when the subject begins to remember? Then we know it's time to begin again. Moreno clenched her jaw. They were training them for something bigger. 7:54 a.m. Breakthrough. A dusty locker held a box labeled replacements. Inside, Polaroids, new targets, a stack of blank name tags. One name was already written. Sarah G. Haskins said it aloud. We found her name in the van folder too. She's next. A field agent called in. Matching address. Des Moines, Iowa. She'd been reported missing last night. 11:33 a.m. Des Moines, Storage Unit 115. Acting on a hunch from an old rental agreement tied to Evelyn Parish's alias, agents converged on the storage facility. They breached the door. Inside, silence. Then movement. From beneath a locked crate emerged a small hand. Sarah Green, age 7. Eyes wide, lips split, wrists red, but alive. In her hand, a paper tiara. She whispered one line. He said, "I'd be the last one." 1:01 p.m., Monroe PD, secure room. Sarah sat with Dana Danner and Jeremy. Dana brushed her hair. Jeremy handed her a teddy bear. Outside, Moreno stared through the glass. She whispered to Keats, "We didn't find the end of it. We found the start." Keats nodded. "We shut down the rooms, but the people who built them." He looked down the hallway toward the files that still needed names. "They're still out there." 6:30 p.m. FBI Case Summary Operation Princess Room. Final report, Phase 1. Rescued survivors. 3 confirmed. Lucas Danner, deceased. Jeremy Callan, escaped. Allison Dwyer, Sarah Green, recovered. Deceased victims. 5+ fugitives. Charles Danner, presumed dead or in hiding. Evelyn Parish, status unknown. Associated suspects. 7 for deceased, 1 in custody, 2 at large. Known sites, 7 confirmed blueprint circulation, global concern. Advisory, protocols may still be in use elsewhere. 11 p.m., Green Ridge Retirement. Dana's apartment. Dana opened her closet. Inside, on the highest shelf, was a box she hadn't touched in decades. Lucas's school papers, his drawings, a YMCA keychain. She added something new, a newspaper clipping. Girl found alive in hidden chamber. FBI uncovers cult-like network of underground child rooms. She placed the box back, closed the door, and this time, for the first time, locked it. September 8th, 2024. Early morning somewhere outside Wausau, Wisconsin. The forest was quiet. Too quiet for a place this alive. Birdsong faded into the mist. The wind moved the trees but not the branches. No distant highway, no footsteps. Just the subtle crack of underbrush as a man stepped through the trees with the ease of someone who'd done it for years. He wore a faded coat, a wide-brimmed hat, and a minister's collar, though he hadn't stepped into a church in over 3 decades. Charles Danner, older, slower, but still alive. He carried nothing but a leather-bound notebook full of designs, sketches of childlike rooms, notes in coded shorthand, blueprints for something not yet built. He paused by a tree. Saturday opened the notebook. The final page read, "Noise corrupts. Silence reveals." The new foundation begins with 1. He looked toward the valley beyond the woods. Somewhere out there, he believed, was a place where no one had ever asked questions, where a room could be constructed, where a child could be chosen, reshaped, silenced. His fingers traced the page. Then he closed the book and smiled. October 1st, 2024. Lansing, Michigan. Jeremy Callan's apartment. Jeremy stood by the window, watching the wind move the leaves. They looked like they were whispering. He hadn't slept the night before, not because of nightmares, but because of something else. He'd been dreaming forward. In the dream, he wasn't in the princess room. He wasn't gray. He was 10, and he was walking away from the woods, barefoot, light in his chest. He was heading home. He touched the photo of his younger self. "I remembered," he whispered again. This time, it didn't hurt to say. November 12th, 2024, Monroe, Indiana, Lucas Danner Memorial Room, YMCA reopening ceremony. What had once been sealed in shame now opened with light. The locker room had been completely remodeled, the pool drained, demolished, the basement leveled and refilled. What stood there now was a community classroom for at-risk youth. A plaque hung on the wall. "In memory of Lucas Danner, 1989 to 1994, may every child who walks through this door feel seen, safe, and free." Dana sat in the front row, surrounded by families, survivors. Even Sarah, now under protection, smiled for the first time in weeks. She looked up at the ceiling, and for the first time, it didn't feel like it was pressing down. December the 25th, 2024, national press coverage. Headline: Princess Room Network. Takedown sparks global investigation into long-term child confinement cases. Subheader: UN task force created to identify similar facilities around the world. In the comments below the article, a survivor from Brazil posted anonymously, "My room had no name, but I remember the bear, and the way they made me pretend to be someone else." Dozens replied. From Italy, from Kansas, from Norway, from Maryland. "I had a blue wall. They called it the Angel Room. I was in one too." Final scene. Unknown date, unknown place. The walls were white, clean, quiet. A girl sat on the floor, drawing in crayon. She looked up. Her voice was clear. "May I be seen?" No answer came. She looked at the ceiling and smiled.